translated.
Oh, look at you.
Such a beautiful sight.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. Hello,
Yeah.
love always, Dev. Hi. Oh my
Yes.
gosh.
Hey, Devin.
Hey, Devin.
It's so nice. You're home, you're chill, you're not in a car or in a mask, so that's great.
I am. What a day. Listen, best laid plans of mice and men, and yeah, this one really got away from me.
It's all good. We're here now, so I'm excited.
We are here now, and I'm like totally settled in and like really pumped to have this conversation with you. So like, thank you for having me, and again for being so understanding.
Yeah, let's do this. Well, okay, I just want to start out just in case there are people who don't know what FreeFall or the FreeFall project is. And basically, every Friday for the next 9 Fridays now, I'm going to hop on here with some people who I feel have done something inspiring or interesting or courageous in some way that's maybe just a little bit different than the way society believes our lives should go, or just kind of the traditional way of doing things. And hopefully it just serves as a point of inspiration for people. So today I brought Dewey on to talk about Dewey's piano party. And what I'm going to ask you to do first, we'll get into the whole story of piano, but if you'll just start by letting us know what is Dewey's piano party, and then we'll backtrack a little bit.
Yeah, well, firstly, again, thank you for having me. What a lovely just point of inspiration, and that you're doing this, and it's just um, I feel thrilled that you would even ask me to do such a thing. It's like it's one of those things people say, like, oh, you're doing this thing. It's like I didn't even realize that it was something interesting to other people. But it's
Yes.
Dewey's Piano Party is a uh, Dewey's Piano Party is a business that I started kind of by accident. It basically centers around my love of playing the piano and having people sing around me, and that sense of community that you get when you're all singing together around a piano just for the fun of it. It's not about being good. It's not about being great. It's just about having fun and singing for fun. And so the business I started is I basically bring a piano into your space, or a keyboard most of the time, and play your songs and make your dreams come true with your group of friends. And a lot of times, if it's a party I'm throwing, it's with my group of friends. And by the end of the night, we're all a group of friends because we've been singing together and just having a good time.
And what I love so much about it is that you say you make other people's dreams come true, but like this is also just a dream come true for you as well, because this is one of your favorite things.
Completely,
I love that.
completely.
So what I want to do, let's go back. Let's go back before Dewey's Piano Party started, and maybe even I want to also say, because I'm going to reference some of this. Dewey wrote his story for me to put on the website that I've been building, and so I have a lot of his story written down in words, and I'm going to reference it. But you said you started with studying music in college, right?
I did. I went to
Right.
college thinking I wanted to be Stephen Sondheim because I'm a musical theater kid at heart, always have been. Loved to sing, and so I thought I would love to write musicals one day. And so I went to school for composition, and while I was there, I was actually a voice major, and piano was a thing that I always kind of did on the side. I'm
Mm.
a self-taught pianist, so it was always just kind of a thing that existed over there. But throughout college, like one of my side hustles was I played piano for musical theater majors who, for their voice lessons and things like that. So that was just a fun like side hustle. Um, and that was, yeah, but I studied music formally, composition. And then after that was at Ithaca College. And then I went on to graduate school to study musical theater writing, again, as a composer at NYU. And that's what moved me to New York City. And then I have never left there since. Um, and
So what?
kind of,
Go
oh,
ahead.
sorry. So, well, somewhere along during that time, I still was very convinced that I wanted to be a composer,
Hmm.
specifically of musicals. And so that was kind of like my North Star guiding me through all of my formal education.
So what happened from there? Because I'm assuming things did not go exactly the way you wanted them to after college. So tell me
No,
about
they
that
didn't.
season.
Well, so interesting, and no one tells you this, but writing musicals doesn't really pay. Um, it's very interesting. That was a revelation for me. Um, But yeah, so when I got out of graduate school, I found myself in New York City with a mountain of debt that I'd taken on to go to college and graduate school, and no monetizable skills to make a living or pay that debt back or do anything. And so I did for about a year after graduate school. I tried to do the freelance musician thing where I was taking odd jobs here and there. I did piano lessons, which I'm terrible at giving. For a little while, I basically took any kind of music work that would come at me. And I somehow scraped together a living for that year, but it was very, very hard. I wasn't always sure how I was going to pay rent and things like that. And, I'm someone who I actually grew up like kind of insecure in that way. And I was like, I just don't want to live this way as an adult. And
Hmm.
so I just kind of said, I need something a little bit safer than this. And um, so from there, I had a friend who was working at a tech startup. And long story short, I wound up getting a job there. That was my entry level job in the world of digital advertising. And 10 years later, I am now several jobs into that career as well. So that's what I've been doing to support myself since school.
So you said there's something you just said there at the end. Oh, like that transition from when you were saying that, you start kind of starving artist, let's just call it that, right?
For sure.
Into, you know what, I just need to feel secure, I need to feel safe. Can you just talk about what that felt like emotionally for you to have to make that decision? Because I know a lot of
Yeah,
artists do that in New York City.
of course. And it was 100% operating from a place of scarcity, of just believing that like there was not a lot of resources in the world and that there's just, um, I should be grateful to take whatever it is I can get kind of thing. Um, by the time I got the job at the tech company, I was frankly so desperate, for lack of a better word, for some measure of security. Because some people are built for the gigging lifestyle. I really, really envy them. I wish I had that in my bones. I don't. I like security. And so by the time I made that decision, it was not about leaving music behind per se,
Hmm.
um, or pivoting. It was really just about paying the bills.
Yeah.
It was about like, this is the thing I need to do to pay the bills. And it wasn't until much later on that I kind of realized the trade-off I had made, for lack of a better word. That was a retroactive realization. In real time, I was frankly just relieved to be getting a paycheck.
Yeah, yeah. So when you did make that transition, did music stay in your life, or
It
yeah,
did
what
to
happened?
some degree. I kept, at that point, I still wanted to be Stephen Sondheim, so I continued to write musicals with classmates, and I produced them to some level. But then the day to day of working in tech, it's like you have less creative energy, you have less time, of course, and you're just one foot out of that world. So I wasn't surrounded by creative people. My community of people was now tech people and my coworkers, and the relationship I was in at the time, it was not actors and other musicians and like the kind of energy you feed off of when you're in conservatory or in graduate school, that it's like you're just in that bubble.
Hmm.
I was no longer in that bubble. I just found I had less creative time and energy, and it was a kind of slippery slope. So I did try to keep music in my life, but it did go kind of dormant there for a couple of years.
Yeah. So then talk us through the transition. How did we get to Dewey's Piano Party?
Yeah, well, it's a kind of long story, but it all again, I call myself an accidental business owner because so along my journey of wanting to be Stephen Sondheim, at some point I realized, I love being a musician and music is a huge part of my identity. And I love writing music, but that's actually not how I want to spend my time and how I would like to make a career, even if it were in music. And it's funny because it's about the stories we tell ourselves. Because for me, I was a composer and a lyricist and an arranger, and that's just kind of how I self-identified. But the thing I've always really loved to do is sit and play piano and have people sing around me. I've been doing it since high school, um, with my friends Emily and Coralie in high school. We would go over to Coralie's house. She had a beautiful grand piano. I learned to play on that piano, basically playing songs from Chicago and Thoroughly Modern Millie in the last 5 years, and all the musicals we obsessed over in high school. We would just get together and just sing them, and her sister would yell at us, and I have such fond memories of doing that. And then through college, of course, I played for people, and then by the time I got to New York, I joined this group called Afterwork Theater, which is how you and I know each other, of course. But for
Right.
anyone who's watching who doesn't know Afterwork, it's a wonderful community theater organization in New York City that provides theatrical opportunities for people who are not trying to be professional actors. Um, so we met there. I met a like-minded community of fellow artists there who also were doing other things, not trying to be full-time actors or musicians or whatever else. And in that community, I found just some of the best friends I've ever made, but everyone loves to sing. So it's just kind of started naturally as like, hey, I'm going to have some folks over this Friday. We're going to grab a bottle of wine. We'll maybe sing some songs. And then just, we did one of those. It was a lot of fun. I think you were at that very first party.
Yeah,
Um,
maybe. I think I heard about your parties first, and then I finally got invited to one. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in.
oh,
But I
that's
knew
so
that,
fun.
that's like part of your story, was part of like you had this tension of like, I can't fit everyone in my apartment, right?
Well, that's exactly, well, yes. Yeah. If you weren't at the first one, you were definitely one of the first ones. But yeah, it was, let's get friends together to sing. And then it was like, the first one was a lot of fun. And then it was kind of like, well, let's do another one and let's invite more people and let's do another and invite more people. And it kind of just took on a life and a personality of its own. And I realized that like somewhere as that was happening, I realized, oh, this is my thing. Like being a composer is not my thing as much as I love that. And not that it has to be either or, but like the thing that has always been my happy place is sitting at a piano and having people sing around me and having it just be for fun.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's what I kind of started to create this little community of friends in my apartment, of which you were an integral part. And then eventually it just kind of took on a life of its own and it frankly outgrew my apartment.
Yeah.
And it was just like, well, what do I do? Because then it became stressful. It's like, well, who do I not invite? Who I want to have? Because I can only fit however many people in a New York City apartment. Um, and so from there, it was like, well, what if I rented out a bar room and then I could invite everyone I want? And well, hey, if I have a bar room, I guess I could just open this up to the public. And before I knew it, I had a logo and a website, and Dewey's Piano Party was born.
I love it. That's so cool. I actually, my small claim to fame, I think this is what I tell myself, but you can correct me. I don't know if you remember, I asked you to come play at my house in Harlem,
Yes,
and
of
I'm pretty
course.
sure that was like the week before you launched at Penny Farthing. And so I like to say I was your first like client, or like you know what I mean? Like I was the first gig that you had.
I
I don't know
think
how
that is
true.
100% accurate. And yes, I would not debate that at all.
I love it. I'm gonna
That was a
ask you
fun
some.
party.
What do you
That
say?
was a fun party.
It was. I still, yeah, that was a great time. I'm gonna ask you something, or at least I'm gonna share something that I've learned about myself, and I think it might resonate with you, but you can tell me if otherwise. But when you're talking about your like you were wanting to be Sondheim and you wanted to be a composer and you like had all of these dreams, but then you had that moment where you just kind of realized I just like sitting by the piano playing music and having people sing around me. And in my journey, I feel like someone taught me or explained to me soul goals versus ego goals. And I
Hmm.
feel like a lot of artists, or at least for myself, you come and you're like, I want to dance on Broadway and I want to, be in musicals and do all of these things. But if I really sit and think deeply, it's not necessarily Broadway. It's that I like being in community and I like creating something from scratch and I like, like hearing music come together and choreography come together and like this feeling of team, teamwork and being proud of something that you created that, didn't exist 3 months before you started, like all of those things, right? And so once you really like tap into your soul, then you can start to really pursue happiness. Because if you're just pursuing like auditions in Broadway, you might be missing the mark a little bit. So I don't know if that's been some of your experience.
That completely resonates with me.
Mm.
I like that term soul goal. I've never heard that. The way I think about it is that is my joy. And like one of my like life mantras is protect your joy, like
Mm-hmm.
through any means necessary. Like, and it's frankly one of the reasons I didn't want to, after during my year of freelancing after school, even at the times when I was like making money and I was getting the gigs and everything, music stopped being joyful for me. Kind of uh, writ large, like composing, piano, all of it. I just started to resent music. And suddenly,
Mm.
this thing that I loved, that had always been my escape from the world and my joy and my soul, suddenly became this thing I had to do, and I started to resent it. And I didn't want that. And
Yeah.
so, and the balance I have certainly wouldn't work for everybody, but like, working in a different field and like being able to do music on my own terms and being able to do Dewey's Piano Party on my own terms, it really has allowed me to not only protect, but like rediscover and reinvigorate that joy, the thing that makes it so special. I get to hold on to that and I get to preserve that exactly the way I want to,
Yeah.
which is like completely privileged and special. And I'm very, Um, yeah, but that's like a guiding principle for me.
I love that. I actually wrote that down from your story, that, protect your joy, and that you like make pivots as needed, if you're starting to do something or go down a path that you feel is not bringing you joy. And kind of along the lines of like mantras and things like that, I'm curious what other mantras, guiding principles, etc. you have, especially when you face fear. Because I'm sure at different points upon this journey, when you put yourself out there and you're saying that you're going to start this thing, or, whatever, or I'm going to go, open this up to a bar. Now I'm going to perform in this venue, whatever. I'm sure there's different points of fear along the way, or different points where the vision that you have for what you think can happen might feel bigger than what you can do in that moment, So I'm wondering what other
Hmm.
things, principles you lean into to push through that.
Well, I think back to a coffee mug at my office that says, "If Britney survived 2008, you can survive today."
Free
And
Britney, by the way.
free Britney. Oh, seriously. Well, that's a whole nother.
Right.
But, but of course, I'm not immune to fear. I actually I'm very crippled by fear in a lot of things.
Mm.
And I don't have a particular mantra that I turn to, but I just remind myself that I think about what is the worst possible outcome here, the thing that I'm actually afraid of.
Yeah.
And then I actually play that through in my head. I'm like, okay, so I get in front of a piano and I literally forget how to play, and the whole room points and laughs at me. And, the New York Times writes an article being like, this Dewey Fleszar is a fraud and he's this awful person, don't hire him. Okay, you know what? That would really suck. And I would still be alive.
Mm. Yep.
And I would still have music as my joy, and I would still have my community of people around me. So if that's the worst thing that happens, we're going to keep going. So if you play it through, it's like there's really nothing to be afraid of.
I love that. Yeah, that's
And I've failed
definitely.
many times.
Well, actually, part of what your story, you said the thing that would probably be most frightening would be like no one showing up to your event, and then that actually happened. I want you to tell me about that.
Yes. So when I started to take parties public, it became a new challenge because the joyful part to me is sitting at a piano and playing music with people around me. When you do it in public, there's suddenly all kinds of new things that you're tasked with as a business owner, such as getting people to show up.
Hmm.
There's a whole art unto itself of doing that I am frankly not great at. um, Party promoting, and suddenly I was like, wow, I'm suddenly an event planner and a party promoter, and so my biggest fear is I'm going to announce a party and no one is going to show up.
Hmm.
And so I did one on a Monday night. It was a new venue. It was a kind of, I do like to experiment with different formats and say hey, let's just try this thing and see if this works. I think you got to always be shaking things up a little bit. So I tried it. It was a Monday night and it was just pouring rain,
Hmm.
just further record books kind of rain in a different part of town. It was a little further from a train. And I was still charging covers at that point. So there was a cover charge. So there's just a lot of disincentives for no one to come. And sure enough, I got there, I'd taken a cab, I set everything up, I did my whole pre-show rigmarole, I was all ready to go, and literally two people came, and they are two best friends,
Hmm. Hmm.
plus my husband. So it was just the four of us. And you know what? I was like, hey, this is the worst thing that could possibly happen. I had a bar minimum that I had to meet. So I was like, guys, drinks on me. So I bought everyone a round of drinks and some French fries, and we sat there. We had a wonderful night. I packed up my stuff. I went home and said, well, great, that happened. And you know what? It was so freeing because I don't have to be afraid of it anymore.
Yep. I was reading your story right before we came on this call. It actually helped me because we had our technical difficulties an hour and a half ago or so, and I was kind of having that because you're like, this is this thing, and I've promoted it, and everyone's gonna be here at 6:30, and whatever. And you know what? I'm just like, okay, this is gonna happen. Like, I got on here, it wasn't working. We're gonna cancel it. We're gonna try again later. Like, people might be like, oh, well, that's not as professional as I thought it was gonna be. Like, who cares? Like, it's just.
Rachel was very professional the whole time, just so you all know.
I mean,
It's the guest you can't always control.
but who cares? Like, we're just living life here, right? So.
Yeah, well, and I think the lesson in that is yeah, there's no matter what you do, there's always some part of it that's out of your control, and you just have to make your peace with whatever that is. It's going to be what it
Exactly.
is, and you can either roll with it or you can not.
Yeah.
And I'm a control freak, so I find rolling with it difficult, but it's easier in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I want to to read this one part because I know this is something a lot of people identify with, whether we're talking music or starting a business or starting a blog or just like anything that people want to do. You said, my question was, what were you afraid of as you did it? And you said, I'm a self-taught piano player, and so I always feel a bit like an imposter. I do
Mm.
regard myself as a decent pianist, but I'm always afraid that a real piano player is going to look at what I do and call me out for being a hack. What is a real piano player, Dewey? And tell
A
me
real
more about
piano
imposter
player
syndrome.
is someone who is a classical pianist who plays all the notes correctly all the time, who knows how to practice, who like, can just do all the technical things that like I just can't do or like can't do without a lot of practice. Um, Ted is a real piano player. Sorry, for those of you who don't know, Ted is a mutual friend of ours who is a bona fide professional piano player. He plays for Broadway orchestras and everything. He's amazing. Um, yes, I still go through life being like the Teds of the world are just like that guy's not a real piano player.
Hmm.
Um, and it's interesting because like what I've learned over time is that like my particular set of skills that is unique to me is my greatest strength. And it doesn't involve being the best capital P piano player on the earth that you can play. That I can't play Rachmaninoff, but that's okay because you know what? Playing Rachmaninoff doesn't bring me joy. That's not something I aspire to do. Um, I like hosting parties, sitting at a piano, and letting people have fun. And
Yeah.
I think that's a talent that I have cultivated over time. And like that's what my particular brand of piano playing lends itself to. Um, and as I'm doing it, it's like maybe someone else would play all the notes right in Sweeney Todd, but like, are they also hosting a party at the same time? Like, because like I've learned there's like a skill in that, and like
Mm-hmm.
bringing people in, and like, what do you do when someone wants to sing, but you can tell they're not quite there yet? How do you make that person comfortable to coax them in? And then what
Right.
about the person who's sitting there with their arms crossed in the corner because their girlfriend brought them and they really just don't want to be there? How do you still make room for that person?
Right. Right.
Um,
So a lot of different
so
skill sets involved, and
it
it's more than
is.
just playing the right notes.
Yes, and that's like not in any way to like toot my own horn, but like to get back to the imposter syndrome, it's it's very real. I feel like we all deal with it in our own way. Um, I find it comforting knowing that we all deal with it in our own way.
Yeah.
That that
Yeah.
the people who I'm afraid of thinking I'm an imposter are thinking that about someone else too.
Yeah, and I mean, because one, it's all relative. So you don't think you're a real piano player, which I like laugh at because if someone were like, "Oh, can you name some piano players?" I'd be like, "Oh, well, there's Dewey. He's great." You know what I mean? Like it's all relative. So that's one thing about imposter syndrome. But I think too, it's just what you're saying and what I'm hearing out of it is just the like you have to lean into your own authenticity. Like what you value and what brings you joy is the thing you need to cultivate versus looking at someone else and trying to be them, right? So
That's the
I think when
exact
you,
word,
yeah, go ahead.
authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, authenticity. That's hitting the nail on the head.
Yeah. Okay. So last couple questions. What's the proudest thing that you've done with Dewey's Piano Party thus far?
The the thing I am most proud of is the community I have been able to create and cultivate. It started as my friends who were just my personal friends who would come to my apartment and sing songs, and it has grown so far beyond that, even in the short time that it has been a thing in the world, that people from people who I didn't know who just found me like as a business in the world who like have come to my events and have become like people who are like, oh, I love this, I want to come, I want to be a part of this. Just the And it's really a testament to, I think, music and just the power music has to bring people together. But that I have been able to, in some small way, create a space that allows that magic to shine and allows that force to bring people together through a shared common interest and to create that community. It doesn't get better than that. That's the joy.
I love that. Yeah, when you talk about people stumbling across you, and now it's not just like your best friend showing up, right? Like there are people who are like hearing about you who don't know who Dewey is. They know Dewey's Piano Party, but it just makes me think of in quarantine just a few months ago. I put this on my story, but when you guys did the virtual choir singing Rent, I saw it on Instagram, was amazed, like teared up, beautiful, beautiful rendition, and it's on my story right now if you don't know what I'm talking about, so go look at that. But it
Oh,
was the
thanks.
coolest thing because I was in the kitchen and I heard it in the living room on, like, it was like ABC News, and they're like, "We'll be right back after this break." And then I heard that song come on. I was like, "I just listened to that on Instagram." Yes, like, is that Dewey? And I ran out into the living room, and you guys were on ABC News. Like, I was, it was so surreal that. And then
That,
I was so excited about it because I recorded it and I texted to you, and I was sure that, like, oh, maybe you
bless you.
submitted it or something like that, and you knew about it, and you were like, oh, what? What channel
No,
is this?
you
What's
broke the
happening?
news to me. You were the angel in that moment in more ways than one. Yeah, but it's just it is wild how things can take on a life of their own, and like that's the other thing is that like the bringing people together in a room and singing, like that's the part I can imagine because I've done that before. And so doing just more of that with more people, that's easy to imagine. Quarantine, like not to like totally pivot this, but like everybody has gotten scrappy in quarantine because we have to. Like it's going to be a long time till people can get together in the same room and sing around a piano together.
Yeah.
So like everybody else, it's like, what can I do? What can I be doing? One thing was the virtual choir. Um, that like took on a life of its own. It got, like you said, it got picked up by ABC News, which I had no idea about.
So cool.
Um, yeah, it was super cool. And the other thing is I joined TikTok, which like I'm not a social
TikTok.
media savvy at all. But as of today, I have 87,000 followers there.
Oh my gosh. What?
It's
I didn't know
absurd.
that.
Yeah, it's like me. I post a piano track of me playing a song, and people can duet because that's the format of how TikTok works.
Hmm.
So they create a duet of like me playing on the right and them singing on the left. And there's at this point thousands and thousands and thousands of these videos of people singing with me on the internet, and it is the most beautiful thing. I mean, for one, it's helping me keep making music and connecting with people during quarantine in some small way.
Yeah.
But the fact that so many people are responding and that I've created now this online extension of this community, or rather, not even extension, this online community
Yeah.
of people who can't wait to come to New York City and come to a real Dewey's piano party when we can all sing together.
Yeah.
Um, it's all wonderful. And like, yes, I wanted to share that as a blessing, but like the real thing I was trying to get at there is that like just create something, and like you never know what it's going to do. It will take on a life of its own. I never 6 months ago would have thought that I would produce a virtual choir, which I only did out of sheer desperation because it was quarantine.
Right.
And I created something really beautiful that I'm really proud of, with people who I love, and it got featured on the news.
Yeah.
And like now I'm this sudden, I've got this sudden TikTok following that like I didn't even know what TikTok was 5 months ago. Um,
That's incredible.
just like be open and follow where things go, and like you just never know.
Yeah. That's perfect. And it's a perfect lead into this last question. It actually was my question as well, but Deb just messaged it to me. So what's next? What's next for Dewey? What's next for Dewey's piano party?
That's a great question. So I'm still playing with the virtual format. It is going to be a while so we can do piano parties in person. I think as things get incrementally safer, I might maybe start doing some like quarantine editions with like almost going back to old school with like bringing people to the apartment in small groups. So Rachel, look out for your invitation. Um,
Make sure people get
just
tested on the way in or something.
no, seriously, like we'll have to do the temperature checks or something.
Yeah.
But until I can do it again in real life, like at the scale that I would like to do it, I'm really leaning into any kind of virtual way. So I do actually have another virtual choir coming up,
Whoa.
that is planned to coincide with National Coming Out Day on Sunday, October 11th.
Nice.
Um, and that is actually something that I dreamed up and have since I reached out to my friends at Broadway Cares, Equity Fights AIDS, and we're going to collaborate on making that a joint release so that we can use it as a fundraiser for them, for all the critical services that they provide
Yeah.
to people all the time, but particularly during COVID, the theater community has been hit particularly hard.
Hmm.
So kind of anything I can do to help there.
Yeah.
Um, so that's one thing, more virtual choirs. I'm keep plugging away on TikTok. I actually have some fun ideas. I'm talking with a couple of brands about doing potential commercials or collaborations with them that involve like virtual singing and things like
Yeah.
that. So
That's so
yeah,
exciting. I'm so happy.
well,
I didn't know a lot of those things, so that's exciting.
yeah, it's fun. I mean, I'm just taking it day by day and seeing where these things go. It's really exhilarating. And I will say none of it is a substitute for being able to sing together around a piano, which I eagerly look forward to doing as soon as it is safe. But
Yeah.
in the meantime, like everything else, I'm having a blast.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dewey. I'm actually I'm gonna end this by doing the same thing that I did to Amanda last week because you know next week's guest.
Do I?
You do. He's your husband.
Oh, wait. Which one? Oh, right, right, right. Yes. Which one? I'm so
So
smoky
yes,
sometimes.
Cardozzi's
That's
gonna be joining
wonderful.
us next week. So if you just could share, you don't even have to you share like his whole story and like that, but just some kind words about Cardozzi and why people might want to pop in to hear about Cardozzi and how he inspires people.
Well, I think I'm clearly biased in a lot of
It's
ways, but
okay.
Cardozzi is genuinely the most inspirational person I have ever met. That guy is just really touched by some kind of divine power, that he has just a natural ability to to inspire and to lead and to facilitate and to bring out the best in people and to help you bring out the best in yourself. Um, it's it's an extraordinary talent, and I will just say that like everything I just shared here, Cardozo was there for all of it, and I don't think I could have or would have done any of it if not for his force in my life.
Yeah.
Um, but and he has started his own business and done all kinds of things that he will tell you about next week. But yeah, he's a good one to listen to that one.
Yeah. Thank you, Dewey. I'm so
Thank you,
glad I got to
Rachel.
talk to you this week. I'm glad it worked out with all the tech and whatnot. And
Yes, and again, my apologies. Thank you so much for having me. This was a delight to catch up with you like this, and I'll text you after this. We'll catch up soon.
yeah, sounds good. Thanks for joining,
Thanks
y'all.
everyone for watching.
Bye.
Bye.